Alright guys, so I'm not a big fan when it comes to planars. The timbre and the bass feels a little bit too light, and a lot of them are just very spicy. Like, I don't hate them, but I won't actively, go out of my way to buy one. So with that in mind, I would actually recommend the S15 from LETSHUOER. It's the most refined planar that I've heard so far, and it's basically like the mini supernova of planars. Very neutral and just very smooth. It fixes the main issues I have with planar IEM, which is in their upper mids and the treble that always feels, a little bit peaky, uneven, and just not very natural. The S15 on the other hand tames those regions without creating lots of, tiny dips and scoops, or little jitters, but still maintaining the air past 10K, which gives you that open feeling in the stage. This tamer sound signature does mean that the treble isn't going to be the most sizzly or the most energetic, but again, there's plenty of air to the cymbal crashes and enough sharpness to the sound without smoothing out the transients and making things come off as overly soft. If you're sensitive in the upper mids region, then you're going to love the S15 as it basically deletes a few dBs off the whole frequency and transitions subtly and smoothly into the treble and the highs. Now the tamer upper mids does affect vocals a bit as the gain region and the overall sharpness is turned down, so the S15 is going to sound the most powerful and extended when it comes to vocals like the RS5, or sparkly and lively, airy like the original oracles. Or in other words, back to the singing analogy, the S15's got good solid chest voice and falsetto, but not enough head voice and power. LETSHUOER boosted the 1.5K region in order to push the vocals a little bit more forward, and it does help with vocal clarity a bit more, as they aren't buried or disappear into the track. But if you're looking for lots of vocal detail and sparkliness, then try something like the EA1000 instead, as the S15 is very neutral when it comes to the overall vocal presentation. Likewise, bass is also very safe is the word I would use. It's not pillowy and light like most planars, so that's good. And there's a decent amount of punch and impact, very tight and very well controlled, fast in its attack and the decay, and the texture is actually very DD-like because of the PR drivers. So overall, just a good quality low end. But if you're looking for more slam and thickness in the mid bass and just more reverb to the bass notes, more air to the slam in general, then something like the Audio Hype 2 would still be better in the low end. Although in terms of overall quality in the low end to the mids to the highs, the S15 is very good, neutral and laid back with an open and airy stage, as well as great technical performance, very detailed, and the separation is very effortless, laid out in front of you. They scale very well as well at higher volumes, so no fatigue or sharpness or anything like that. Again, very smooth and very refined, kind of like a mini supernova. The S15's more neutral and safe signature does mean it's not going to specialize in any area in particular, and just plays back every genre I threw at it very evenly, very safe, doesn't highlight any regions, but instead just lets kind of the music flow and play itself naturally. Versus the original Timeless and the S12, the S15 is much smoother and more refined, more even in its dynamics and laid back, while still maintaining the same technical performance, which is very impressive without altering and over boosting in the treble. So no light or sharp timbre, more natural, although it's not as exciting in the low end or as lively in the upper mids, the treble, as the Timeless and the S12. So if you want something more fun, then any of the S12s would work and be better in that scenario, but the S15 is much better as a neutral IEM. Likewise, compared to the original Wu TIAN and Heyday, the S15 is again cleaner, smoother, more refined, not as sizzly and energetic in the treble and the upper mids, and the low end isn't as emphasized like the original Wu. So for those who are turned off by planar timbre, I would recommend giving the S15 a try, as the playback is just much more natural and the layering and separation is still great. And versus all four of the planars, the S15 maintains the same technicality and even more air actually, all while without sounding sharp and floaty. Now compared to some of the hybrids like the Blessing 3, the S15 actually sounds more weighted, fuller, and not as peaky in the upper mids and the treble, but still airy. Both are around the same and very capable when it comes to technical performance, whereas the Blessing 3 has sharper and more detailed vocals, but I would still take the S15 over the Blessing 3 because of the more low end, less shouty, fuller sounding, and ironically more natural and less thin. Versus the Performer 8, both are actually similar in that they follow a straighter, more neutral tuning signature, very similar technical performance. The Performer 8 is sharper in the notes, whereas the S15 is airier and smoother, less peaks and dips in the treble, and just overall fuller sounding, as well as, without sounding warm or overly colored. Again, I would still take the S15 because the Performer 8 has even less vocal gain than the S15 and just not as refined in the treble and just not as smooth. Now, versus the T2, the S15 is slightly better when it comes to layering and separation, more air, and the stage feels more open, whereas the T2 has a more holographic staging, fuller sounding, more powerful in the vocals, and slightly better bass textures. So it really depends on what you're looking for. For me, as a vocal lover who likes to, listen loud and prefer darker IEMs, I would still take the T2 because the vocals are more complete, they're more powerful, they're fuller and more detailed. But as a neutral all-rounder, the S15 is still better because it's basically just a direct upgrade to the P1 Max and all of the other neutral sets like the Hexa, the Sonus, and the CINNO. Same sound, but just smoother and more refined with a bump in the tech like layering and the resolution, and overall just more air and just feels more open and just a little bit better than the cheaper ones. Now, as for the CINNO, I'll just review it real quick here. It's a neutral set like the Hexa, but with better sub bass and less sharp sounding. However, it is darker leaning and not as airy as the Hexa and the Sonus. The CINNO's mid bass is actually fairly light like the Hexa, even though it graphs, a lot more on the graphs. I wouldn't recommend it for rock tracks because kick drums are just too light, not enough impact, similar to the Hexa. The sub bass is fine, a little bit more rumblier than the Hexa, but it's just that the mid bass is a little bit lacking. Now, there are some dark spots in the stage as well because of the dip, but overall stage is, it's got a good depth, and layering and resolution is competitive at $100. Because of the flatter sound, the CINNO lays out the music as it is without, interrupting or altering and focusing on a particular region. The whole signature or the tuning, the frequency is very even, very flat, and very just well laid out. Basically, if you want a neutral set with good layering that, you can crank up, then the CINNOs are for you. But yeah, if you're looking to upgrade from the Hexa or the Sonus, then the S15 is a very well tuned and refined version of them. And in my opinion, it's the benchmark when it comes to planar refinement and just planar timbre, because it sounds very natural and very smooth and even throughout the whole frequency. But with that said, thanks for watching, guys. That's all for now, and I'll see everyone in the next one.